Hello and welcome. My name is JodieLynn Craven, founder of Abundance Consciousness, and this is my dear friend Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Marie, founder of Soulgate, and welcome to Channel Squared, where we have extraordinary conversations about everyday life topics.
Yes. Oh my God. Do we have a steamy, spicy episode in store for all of our listeners today? We're diving into Highwire episode 248, The Warning We Ignored. Capitalism, collectivism, totalitarianism, all the isms, and the erosion of values within our countries that our countries were built upon, and how we've been manipulated, build back better, distortion, manipulation, and everything in between. This one is a mouthful. Whew.
Yes, it is. And it's interesting. Hopefully we do this justice because this is a very important topic. We are really seeing our political climates change, our economic climate change. We are seeing our freedoms and our liberties change. And so I really hope that this episode, my intention for this episode is that everybody walks away from it thinking about the areas where they need to take a stand for what matters to them. That's my intention. I'm sure that that's your intention. And hopefully we do the Highwire justice in our depiction of how we interpret the episode, and we evoke some change that we need to see in our world.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. That is my intention too. It's just have people walking away seeing their world maybe a little bit differently, asking some more questions. And I think we will do it justice. So whether you listening to this right now have actually watched this episode or not, I think that's the first thing that we would recommend, is that after we're done here today, carve out some time to watch it and form your own opinion. Take everything we say with a grain of salt. Just like Heather said, we want you walking away starting to ask some really good questions about what's going on. So there was a specific reason we've never done this before, where we've chosen to talk about somebody else's content that they've delivered. But we thought it was super relevant to what's going on in the world, like you said. And there was some really like big gut punches for me too. Did you find that, Heather?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were moments that it had me questioning even things that I had channeled on. It was such a profound episode to me that, I even took a moment to step back and go, wait a minute, like, is this what I'm talking about? Is this very thing that is stripping people of their freedoms what I've been talking about? And I came to the conclusion that no, they're not the same.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think that I think we should just kind of dive in, and we'll give kind of some commentary as we go along as to what we think about it, and maybe some of the things that came up for us when we were watching. So just to give you a brief overview of what happens in the episode, it is an interview between Del Bigtree and Edward G. Griffin, who is the author of The Creature of Jekyll Island. Is an amazing book. We are going to link all of this in the show notes for you. So if you want to pick up the book, you want to watch the episode, whatever, it'll all be there for you. But he is interviewing Edward G. Griffin, and he is interviewing him based on a video that has recently gone viral with Edward G. Griffin and Yuri. Let me see if I can get this name right without totally butchering it. Where did I write that? Yuri Bezmenov. So he was a KGB member who defected to the United States. They did an episode together on live television, an interview where he basically told the United States and the entire world everything that is kind of what we're going through now, 40 years later. So you can imagine the holy moly.
Yeah, this episode was 1984.
Exactly.
So 37 years ago.
Yes. So this is what we're talking about today.
Is all of this, and they go into, so in this episode with Del Bigtree, they talk about G. Edward Griffin and him talk about this other episode of G. Edward Griffin interviewing Yuri Bezmenov. And one of the things that struck me was this that it's been going on for so long, this distortion, this if you will, brainwashing, and it's not like the secret spy movies where there's like secret spies running around. It was really like in your face. All of this is being done in our faces, and the things they talked about were infiltrating education, healthcare, media, and the economy. And brainwashing us. And I mean, this is our entire lives. This has been going on since before we were born. This has been happening, this destruction or distortion.
Yeah, one of the things that they had talked about, when they were talking about the timeline of when this sort of is starting, right? They started with the education systems because, and I'm going to attempt to remember this off the top of my head here. It was, what was it, 12 to 15 years
Yep.
of molding 12 to 15 years of people into this ideology is all that it would take to change everything that we know about what's free and what's not.
Yeah, he called it ideological subversion, and it was really just means changing the perception of reality. And 12 to 15 years, like that's all it takes to change everything. But it was interesting to step back for 1 second. When I first started channeling and started working with you, one of the first things that we channeled, because one of the questions I had, looking at the corruption of money and the systems and whatever, was what was the real intention of money? And it was supposed to be an exchange. But what happened, what we channeled was that there was these individuals that made it to this high point, and think of it like a bowl, and they were sitting on the cusp of the bowl, and then they're kicking people down so that they can't get up that high. And what blew my mind is G. Edward Griffin and Del are talking about this, that back before this time we had traditional capitalism, and there was companies competing, and it was really like the supply and demand drove everything. How good your product actually was drove everything. That was the competition. And they were, the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and all of them, they were very cutthroat. But then once they got to this pivotal moment where they were on top and they controlled most things, what they did was they changed the system. They brought in imported Britain rules, like the charter corporations having permission from the crown, and which allowed them to create favoritism and to create controls and stop people in their tracks when they weren't going the direction that they wanted to. And then back to this education piece, they started paying large donations to universities so they could have board seats. And then once they sat on the board, the more money they were giving, the more that they were manipulating the curriculum and what we learned coming up through school. So it was these tiny shifts in even just words that we use, like collective, or the sum of the whole is important. Yeah. Just
Yeah. And, when you talk about the word collective, right? Collectivism is something that they're discussing in this episode. And this is the movement, right? Is to move to collectivism. And what's really fascinating to me is, those of you who follow my work know that I speak to beings that describe themselves as the collective. And they talk about, oneness as collective, but the way that the word collective is used in the spiritual sense and the way that collective is used in this other sense, this change in ideology, this difference, which we'll go into in a little bit here, is a night and day difference. And this was part of what was so confronting for me about this episode, is the language that was used is some of the very language that I use when I'm channeling beings from the other side.
Even when you think about your own values, and what you've been brought up to believe, the values of our country, and this whole movement that's been happening over the last couple of years of equality, and then watching this episode and hearing that there was a mask on it, that this is a distorted version of reality designed to create separation, designed to create control, and essentially a totalitarian regime.
Exactly. We looked up the definition of equal earlier, and I don't remember it now completely off the top of my head.
I'm going to look it up. You keep talking.
She's going to look it up right now. Yeah. So, it was really interesting to hear what equal actually means and how it's been utilized in language today. You got it there?
Yeah, I do. Well, and so the definition of equal, number one, being the same in quantity, size, degree, or value. Number two, having the ability or resources to meet a challenge. A person or thing considered to be the same as another in status or quality.
So when I think about equal in this context, right, the context that you just defined, this is everything and everybody is the same. Zero individuality.
Which before this conversation, before this episode, in my brain, the conditioning that I've been through is the same is good. Men and women on the same playing field. It doesn't matter what color you are, on the same playing field. But that's not what it means.
Right.
It means being the same. Like, you own the same car. You said it earlier. You own the same car. You own the same house. You have the same amount of money, or around the same amount of money. What is that?
What is it?
Communism.
Oh my.
Communism. Like,
right.
I can see now the distortion, and I hope that this, I was going to say, hope this doesn't ruffle people's feathers, but I actually hope that it does. That this lands for you the way that it landed for us, that some of the language that we've been indoctrinated to use, we need to start questioning this language, because the definitions of things, even throughout this pandemic, by the way, the definition of like herd immunity, according to Wikipedia, and our history and has all been distorted and changed to fit different narratives. And it's okay to ask these questions. Like that's how we ended up having this conversation, Heather, right? Earlier was, what does equal even mean? I know in my heart what it's supposed to mean, or what I thought it meant, but what is the definition of equal? And what happens when we're all trying to be the same?
We become a machine, right? If everybody is the same, we all do the same, we all drive the same, we all have the same house, and we all make the same money, and we have a totalitarian government who says this is what you should get to have, right? it strips you of choice, it strips you of freedom, and it strips you of your birthright of being a soul incarnate as human. And that is of free will. You know, when we talk about this, this is a spiritual conversation, right? Because when we came here, this was the gift of coming here, was getting to choose for ourselves, our individual soul experience. And this is has the potential to rip you completely out of that. You know, they make the comment, you know, you've heard this, you know, probably in the news, all of you that are watching, but you will own nothing and you will be happy. So that brings up the question, well, if you don't own it, who does? Who owns it? Someone owns it.
Someone owns it. If you're renting it from someone, there is an owner somewhere. Yeah. I want to step back for 1 second and go back to this equalness, because you're talking about individuality, and it's so interesting, the distortion of our own brains and society and everything like that. But it has become a bad thing to think about yourself as an individual, and to even like hold up your own rights and to question things. Like, all of these things have been distorted. Like, oh, you're egotistical if you think that you're special. But you are special, you are unique, you are individual. And I want to use a quote, and it's not the exact quote, but it came from Lauren Sarcion at one of our trainings that we were in with her. She said this, and it popped out of my brain when we were talking about this earlier. But without you, everyone's experience is different. So without you, everyone's experience is different. So you, the individual, are important in this entire equation.
Mm-hmm. You know, and there's so much narrative right now about, you know, give up your beliefs, give up your rights, give up your individuality for the benefit of the masses, for the benefit of others. Look, I am all for loving, supporting, helping, carrying your neighbors on your back. I am all about it, and I am here for it. But I am not here for giving up my birthright of getting to choose what I do and what I don't do.
Yeah.
You know,
you were saying the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That is the direction that we're going. But what I missed, and what this episode really brought forth for me, is it means that the individual is dispensable and disposable. That if it's not good for the whole, which, I mean, we've seen them say crazy things over the last 2 years of what is good for the many, saying that their underlying tone or tonality is that the individual is dispensable and disposable. If you know, and you see that in a lot of their messaging. That's why this is so mind-blowing, watching this happen and watching this interview from 1984.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's super fascinating. And, you know, again, like, I highly encourage you to watch the episode. We will put it in the show notes. So, you know, look down there and you will see it. For those of you who are watching live, I'll put it in the chat right now. Obviously, don't tune away right now, but just copy and paste it for later so that you can check it out. It's just absolutely amazing, really.
Yes. They are also talking about this division between left and right, left wing, right wing, conservative, liberal, what is it in US? Conservative versus Democrats. Is that right?
Oh yeah. So it's conservative or liberal is kind of the two, you know, red or blue, however you want to look at it. Right.
And what's interesting, I'll tell you what just popped into my mind, but in this episode, they were talking about how that was designed to create division among the people. Well, I don't fit into this box on the right, so I must fit in the left, but I don't, like you have to be against something and for something, and how that was a distortion. And it's so interesting because in US, the conservatives are red, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the liberals are blue, but in Canada,
Right.
it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm. It's no wonder we're all confused.
Right. Right.
Know?
Absolutely.
I think it's really great that you're pointing out the distortion, and when I see this distortion, this is exactly what polarity is made of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is distortion.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you look at everything that's happening in our world, the propaganda we're being fed, the way that we've been, lied to and robbed of our, own free thinking because we've trusted that this information is accurate. When I think about this, I think about the distortion and I wonder, is this polarity rearing its little ugly head?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's really fascinating. Gets me thinking.
Absolutely. I don't know where I was going to go there. So, but it's interesting, the distortion of our individuality, how it's not okay, but it's okay for some.
Right.
This distortion of you need to be equal, which behind that equalness, whatever equality is that you're not. Is that,
Right.
Because you're a woman or because you're a different color or whatever, that you're somehow not equal. You're not the same. Like when you start looking at it from the perspective of that definition, equal means the same. Yeah, you're not the same. I am not a man. I'm a woman.
Right.
I can have a baby. My husband cannot. Like that.
Right.
That's incredible. And there's things that he can do that I can't. But that doesn't mean he's better than me, or males are better than females, or vice versa. Just different individuals. They're
Right.
different.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we were given physicality that is different of one another for the purpose of the continuation of the species.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
if we want to get really scientific and granular about it, that's pretty much sums it up, right? You have to have one party that's able to create the species, and you have to have the other half of that creation somewhere, right? Now, there are some species where, one does it all, right? But in our species, you have to have both, right? And you have a protector and provider, and you have a nurturer and a gatherer, right? Mm-hmm. And it's to continue the species. Mm-hmm. Now, that protector and provider is going to be stronger than the nurturer and gatherer, because the nurturer and gatherer has to be soft in order to nurture and in order to be, what a younging would need in order to grow, right? Mm-hmm. But the protector's got to be strong, mm-hmm. right? So, of course, the male sex is going to be physically stronger than females. They were designed that way. Mm-hmm. They are different. We are different as ladies.
And that's a good thing.
It's okay. It's great. It's a great thing.
It's a great thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it was deliberate, this distortion of, back in the day, women were worshipped. Back in Egypt, you look at like tombs and stuff like that, they have pictures of women and they show them like forward facing and something with their hands. I can't even remember. I watched a documentary about it once. But just showing how much they they held up women in high regard, and then that was lost in some translation and in through distortions of, centuries. um but it's so interesting. I think that that was deliberate. I think it was
Yeah.
meant to create a divide and to, just in my opinion, to create that divide and to get people questioning. And for me, this one really hits home because growing up in business, learning how to be an entrepreneur and like being in the brokerage business that I had a lot of male examples and not very many female examples. And I thought that I needed to be more like a man. And I think a lot of women go through this. So I tried to be more like a man. I tried to be hard, and I tried to, be all work and, no BS and all of these things, which ended up hurting me or hindering me in the long run because I wasn't present with all of me. I had atrophied this huge, beautiful superpower of, femininity. I didn't know how that worked, so I just, like tried to slice it off and move on. And it was obviously one of the keys to my awakening was coming back to that place and honoring the feminine and the masculine within, and honoring that I am different, and that's okay. It doesn't mean worse or better. I mean, it's different. But I don't want to be like anybody else because I'm that divine spark of God. And so are you. Each and every one of you listening right now, you were meant to be you on this planet. And that's where your power lies, truly.
Yeah. And I think that, this is one of the things that I found so fascinating about this episode was it brought forward a lot of these, ideas and beliefs of, what equality actually means, what it means in your heart versus what they mean it means. And that it's all appears to be part of the programming that is, ultimately, we will take care of you.
Yeah.
And you'll do as you're told.
Yeah, and you'll do what you're told. 100%. And there was another, I can't remember, this was totally outside the episode, but it goes together with the ideological subversion that Yuri was talking about, changing the perception of reality. It was mass formation psychosis. And it's so interesting that this episode with, Del Bigtree comes out, and then all of a sudden, I think at the same time, Joe Rogan had a couple of really explosive podcasts, and this word mass formation psychosis comes out, and it breaks the internet last weekend. People looking up what this means. And it's really kind of the same thing, getting everybody to be in this psychosis in lockstep. And when we were talking about this, you brought up education. Look at the way that the desks are lined up. You have to walk in single file. Put your hand up, speak when spoken to. Like, all of these things were to train us to be obedient little citizens.
Right. Exactly. It was all part of this indoctrination into do as I say. Do as I say, because I am the authority. And, I am not saying at all to just throw caution to the wind and start a, rebellion. That is not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is,
don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. It's interesting. In this episode, they actually talk about rebellion versus revolution. Revolutions are organized, and, people come together and organize in a way that makes change. Rebellion is just, the bratty kid that's like, I'm not going to do what you say. That doesn't really get you anywhere. Sending emails to each other and just talking about it doesn't really get you anywhere. Right. So, The point being that, we've been trained up to be good little, ducklings and follow along.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot continue.
No.
So one of the things that they said in the video, the original video, is that, and this is talking about America, that Yuri had said there is no other place on the earth to defect to. This is the only one left.
Mm-hmm.
I throw Canada in the America bucket. I feel like America, we're talking about America, the continent.
North America.
North America, I feel like, because Canada does have a lot of freedom like the United States. They may have some socialist types of programs, but, from a freedom perspective, Canada's fairly free. And I just encourage everybody that sees this to really open your eyes, look at what you've been told, listen to the words that they have given you. When they talked about this pandemic first started, they said, 14 days to flatten the curve. 14 days to flatten the curve. One of the things they talk about in this Highwire episode is that all it takes is 12 to 15 years to bring up a new generation, a different thought process, and then it just requires one crisis and have it last about 6 days. And here we've got 14 days to flatten the curve. Mm-hmm. And now look at where we are. 2 years later.
2 years later. And you can see the divisiveness between people, and you can see, I'm questioning everything all the time, especially the things that I believe. I'm constantly checking myself. Hey, does that make sense? Especially when this I first started to see all of this, like, am I crazy? I'm going to talk to some other people, but from a place of curiosity and asking questions, not trying to submit my will on you and you must think this way. That's in my opinion not how ascension works. It's you deciding you want to see an alternate reality, an alternate truth. You want to see the light versus polarity, or however you want to look at that, but really asking questions of, what do I believe and why? Just like we were about that equal, being equal. Why? What does that mean? Mm-hmm. And the more you begin to ask, the more you can see that the distortion that is actually happening. And what's interesting and what's heartbreaking is that it all comes, like, the way that they disguise it is through reform. Something better for all, build back better.
Build back better.
Build
like it's broken.
Better. Well, and I would agree that there are some things broken, but who broke it? Like, right. How long has it been broken? And what do you want to go to? When you look at the plan of where they want to go, when you look at the World Economic Forum, and they can say till they're blue in the face that that's not what they want. But when they all use the same freaking language across the world, build back better, something is going on. Like, that is a script. The other day, I don't know if I should even reference it here, but the other day I got a text message from somebody. I can't even remember who it was from, one of my friends. And they were looking at speech patterns between the leader of the country that I live in and Hitler.
Yep.
And they used 3 statements, 3 sentences, verbatim, word for word. The leader of the country that I live in said 3 exact sentences the exact same way as Hitler. Coincidence? Come on. Come on.
Right.
Like, unless he was studying Hitler and that was just rattling around in his brain, but why was he studying Hitler? And this guy is already a fanatic for, Fidel Castro. He's talked about how he, well, I think he's beyond the point. Anyway, he's talked about how he admires communism and, all of these things. So, like, all of these are little hits of, like, pay attention. What is happening beyond the words that they're using. And a lot of time it's disguised behind reform.
Right. And, I think that, something that is kind of like an undertone of this entire conversation goes back to an episode that we had done months ago about complacency.
Yeah.
If we sit here and allow this to continue, we are being complacent. And it is in the complacency that they will finally get complete and total control. You see, we still have skin in the game. There still is a chance. One of the things that I find super interesting is that the United States has more gun-toting citizens than all of the other countries combined.
Wow.
And there are more privately owned weapons in the United States than in the military. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
Because when you think about your freedoms being taken away, says who? Says who? Do you let them? Do you let them just come take them? Why are we, I don't understand why we would allow that to occur. And it's easy to just lay down. It's easy to just be complacent. We've been trained up to be lazy. We've all spent, a year and a half working from home, some of us sitting on our tuchus, not working at all.
Yeah.
We've been trained up to be complacent.
Well, and that was one of the things that they said in this episode is that your civil liberties, your, constitutional rights don't matter. You don't care about them when you're drowning and somebody is offering you air. And that's the point that this they want to get us to, is that the people are so reliant on the government and their protection that it doesn't even matter. They're so afraid that they just want, daddy or mommy government to save them so that they can just breathe. They're not even thinking about all of the things, that, goes right into digital currency or the digital dollar. And a lot of people are like, well, I never use cash anyway. What's the big deal? And, they're already watching what we're purchasing. The big deal is that now they have full and total control. When that happens, oh, that will never happen. Yeah, I bet you said that a lot of times before this happened, this last 2 years. So did I, right? Like, I didn't think any of this would happen. Like, my husband, Nate, was just reading an article before we hopped on that in one of the provinces in Canada, they're going to have like a surtax for all those people that are unvaccinated. It's coming. Mandatory vaccinations is, the buzz here in Canada. This stuff can happen. And back to the digital dollar for just 1 second, when they know, or when they have total control over what you spend, they can stop you from spending on things that they don't want you to spend on, or force you to spend money, so that they're stimulating the economy and they have, velocity of money. It's moving, you have 30 days to spend your money or else it's no longer available for you. You can only spend it within 5 miles of your house. You can't spend it at this grocery store, only this grocery store. You can only do this with it. They have so much more control that people aren't seeing, that is scary and very dangerous.
It's really, it's really interesting when people, I'm putting this in the chat. I said I would do that and I got distracted by our juicy conversation. Everybody says, oh, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. Well, when you look back to the fact that we closed the entire world, the whole world closed. I bet nobody ever saw that coming.
Nope.
And then some areas of the world never reopened.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we look at, you know, Austria, Australia,
Mm-hmm.
you know, these guys are really in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great episode.
It is a great episode. And I want people to understand that we're not saying this so you feel like hopeless or game over, but so that you start asking the questions, because knowledge truly is power. When you start, Heather said it earlier, and I wrote it down because I really wanted to bring it up. So this is Heather's quote: "If you can see through the lies, you can create change." When you can see clearly, you can create something different. And that, and in whatever format feels good to you. But a lot of people are just waiting for someone else to make this change for them, so waiting for things to go back to normal, or waiting for the government to allow them to do things. And the more that we submit to our own version of what is going on, the more that we're going to co-create and create that reality over and over and over again. Like, it's so interesting. My parents, my mom and I went grocery shopping and did a bunch of stuff. It was Christmas Eve and whatever. And I have my own beliefs and I stand firm in them. I have researched them. They make sense for me, and I'm okay standing on my own 2 feet. They're what I believe. And I'm constantly questioning and checking in on, like, you know, am I still clear on what I am creating in the world, in my world today? And I don't wear a mask because I don't think it's healthy for me. I have an anxiety attack when I try, and it's not worth it. I also have a safety background, and I know different masks are for different things, and what their purpose truly is. So it was hard for me to get behind it from the very beginning. So it's my choice, and I do that. But a lot of people will say, I can't do anything. There's nothing I can do. I'm locked up at home and there's nowhere I can go. And no, that's not true. I have done everything that I have wanted to do in one way or another. In one form or fashion, I have found a way to do it. And, you know, going to the store, I go everywhere without a mask and nobody says anything. And my mom, she, you know, believes that she needs to wear a mask and that's what she needs to do. And okay, fine, whatever. That's her choice. It's her reality. I'm different. And she said to me after like 3 stores, what the heck? Nobody asks you to wear a mask? I'm like, I don't know. Did you see anybody ask me? And she's like, they don't give you trouble. And I said, did you see anybody give me trouble? And she's like, no, it's just weird. I've never seen that. I thought you would get in trouble. That's the conditioning. Are you wearing it? Are you doing these things because it's for your health, for you, and you've made the decision? If you are, kudos to you. Yes, that's what we're saying, is choose, consciously choosing. But if you're just doing it because someone else said you should, this goes back to the conversation when we were kids. Just because your friend says jump off a bridge, should you do it? No.
Right. You know, and that's the thing is like, it's, you know, what you're talking about here is something that they also talked about in the episode that I think is a really important point. And that is, it only takes 15% to completely turn the tide.
Yes.
15%. That number is so small. 15%. You get 15% of people organized together. It can completely change everything.
Yeah.
Look at how we were all convinced and fed the riffraff stories that we've been fed by the number of people that did this. This was a very small, organized group of people. Mm-hmm. We're talking about governments. We're talking and high-level governments, not even necessarily the lower level governments. We're talking high-level governments. Okay. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the media. Few channels picked it up and everybody else glommed on. And we're talking about maybe some statewide governments. this is how it started, is a few people got together, organized a blatant attack on the world population.
For whatever
and like
reason.
a bunch of lemmings, we all went right off the cliff.
And you know what? At first I was scared.
Because yeah, of course. Of course.
You don't know. And, you've been really open on our channel about how there was a dark time for you in 2020. And I was just reflecting the other day, I think 2020, I felt like I was propping so many people up, like it's okay. Right. And just into like research mode and just having my eyes opened. But I felt 2021 was harder for me, like just consumed with all of this knowledge and information and beginning to see the world from a different perspective, and somewhat feeling alone in that, I have a vast amount of knowledge that I don't share publicly with everybody because it's just not the time or place, and because you'll get censored a lot of times if you do. So, or canceled. I think like kudos to you, Heather, for saying we should talk about this, because the cancel culture is so high, and to have a conversation about collectivism when we're all under the same distortion that collectivism is a good thing, that it's distorted by this reform of like the whole and everything that we've been taught. And for me, watching that crumble and having this conversation with you is vital to ascension.
Yeah. And it was really when I first brought this up to you, the idea of talking about this particular episode, this is a compelling, there's a little piece of me inside that goes, oh my God, what are you doing? This is like sabotage, career suicide. What the hell are you doing? YouTube is going to kick us off, whatever, right? All of the things came up before I even brought this up to you. In fact, I sat with my husband and, made him, watch it with me. And, I had a lot of conversations with him about, oh my gosh, this has me thinking about the things that I've been channeling and about, being a collective and coming together and working together. And, he's like, stop. He's like, the way that you are bringing people together is different than turning over all of your, gifts, abilities, who you are. Like the individuality of you does not cease to exist in the collective coming together world that you envision for the future. So when I think of us coming together, we come together for the betterment of us as a community, but we still remain individuals in it. Yeah. This equality is that we all get equal, opportunity, that we are together in it, but we're still individual people, and we don't just mow one down for the betterment of everybody else. That's not the collective that I have in mind. This totalitarian, the word I'm trying to say, this whole idea of, sacrifice one for the benefit of everybody else. That's not cool. No. There's a better way. Yeah. I'd like to throw some resources out here from the video. There were a couple of really great websites that were discussed in the video. One of them is needtoknow.news, needtoknow.news, and they have it arranged where there's kind of like a quick pitch to the article, the news article, and then you can click on it and go deeper down the rabbit hole into the article if you wish. But for those of us that are in a big hurry and those of us that only consume 5 minutes of anything at a time, that is a really great little website. And the other one is redpilluniversity.org. redpilluniversity.org. I'll put them in the chat. We'll have them in the episode notes. But that is a really interesting website. If you are wanting to explore the rabbit hole, you can open it up and take a peek inside, or you can literally walk through the door and you can't unsee it. So it's really fantastic. I also highly recommend the Highwire with Del Bigtree. He talks a lot about informed consent when it comes to vaccines and your medical freedoms. And he's a big mover and shaker trying to, organize and inform people so that they can make informed choice. They're not just fed the propaganda.
Exactly. Well, and something else that I want to add to our entire conversation is that, and we've said this a lot, is that this is all a part of the plan. Our guides, God, us, before we came here, we knew all of this was going to happen, that we would be living in this time, in this season. And we said yes to it. And we said yes for our own individual reasons. And that could be coming together as with many and holding up the fabric of, old school values, or, opening people up, helping people ascend, whatever it is. I think it's so important right now to understand that you're not alone. That there's a lot of people who are questioning all of this stuff. We are constantly, and it feels like the depth of that questioning and seeing through this veil or this distortion has grown vastly since we even started this channel over the last 6 months.
Yeah, definitely. And, I feel very encouraged when I think about that it only takes 15%. We can get 15%. And I will stand with you to be part of that group, to evoke the change that we actually want to see happen for our future. We can't continue to be complacent in this. This is not, we will be bulldozed. So, I really encourage you to talk to one another, to continue the conversation, to, get involved. Watch the episode. Yes. Watch the episode. And get involved in your community groups. It starts with a community, and, we're building one here. Please, join the community, share this community with your friends, just start talking. Get the word out. The future and your freedoms hang in the balance. And ultimately, it's your choice how you live going forward.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be from a place of being afraid,
Right.
I mean, there's been times that I've been afraid during this pandemic, but where I sit right now in this seat, exposed, seeing more than I ever have is a place of confidence, of peace. Because I know that I was meant to be here at this time to either share wisdom, to help people ascend through questions. I think that's a beautiful way. I have zero attachment. I was saying this to you earlier, Heather. I have zero attachment to the people around me believing what I believe, but right. I'm willing to ask certain questions so that they will start questioning their own narrative that they've given to themselves, to question the reality that they've co-created for themselves, and see if that's what they want. If that's what they continue to choose, great, awesome, wonderful. And if they decide that they want to choose something different, amazing. That's right. Why we're here, is to choose.
Right. Yeah. And, when you're having conversations with friends and family, strangers, always come from the place of love. Yeah. You're sharing with them because you love them, whether you know them or not. Never forget the love. If you always come from the place of love, it will always land perfectly for that person to hear.
Mhm.
It'll always, you know, be the question that they needed to wake up, to open their eyes, to begin to question everything.
Yeah. Woo.
Now that we've dropped in a massive bomb on everybody on YouTube, let's look at the comments, shall we?
Yeah, we haven't done that yet. Oh man.
Let me see here. So Jessica, I'm fully into living systems now, and diversity is always the #1 metric of health in any system. Paying attention to the edges of systems, lands, healthcare outliers in any system keeps you aware of the direction of growth of the organism. You can support or tailor or nourish or kill, but if you don't acknowledge the reality of all and increase diversity as much as possible, none survive. Yeah. Powerful words. Powerful words there. We're glad you're here. Let's see.
You keep reading.
Yeah, well, you know, she goes on. She's quite commentary here today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Vitalism. I am a vitalist. Everyone can choose mechanism, vitalism, Christianity, and anything in between. But vitalism is also real, and it's my religion. She puts in quotations with a little laughing emoji. Yeah, yeah. Let's see what else here. I'm trying to think of this other comment, what it was related to. Maybe you can help me there, Jody.
I don't know either.
Yeah, nothing is wrong. This whole world needs to look exactly as it should. If we don't like it, it's our shit and we need to change it. That's right. It's our shit and we need to change it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. All great things. We thank you all so much for coming each week and joining us in our conversations about all kinds of topics. And, you know, we recognize that this is one that could rub people the wrong way. And we lovingly share it with you from a place of love because we care about you and we encourage you to, you know, create the change, you know, just create the change. You have all the power in the world to create your experience. You are the creator incarnate. So just begin creating. Yeah.
Well said. I've got nothing to add except like this video, share it, make sure that you're subscribed.
Let's tell them about our new Instagram.
Oh yeah. We have a new Instagram page. So if you didn't notice, it probably followed you if you're on our Instagram pages following one of us. Heather's been working diligently on following everybody that follows us on our separate pages, and we're going to have new content up there. We're also going to be recording new content for the YouTube channel, so stay informed, follow us on Instagram, and you can get all of your Channel Squared news there.
Yes. The handle for, I think I totally typoed that just now in the chat. It is at Channel Squared, all spelled out. So that is our new handle over at Instagram. And yeah, a lot of new content coming your way. So stay tuned.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Wonderful. Thanks for being with us today. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.